Okay, so I got this DM on Friday and I haven't slept since. The sender, will call him Hero, is basically living every introvert's worst nightmare. You know that feeling when you're home alone and you hear a floorboard creak and you're like, oh, it's just the house settling. But deep down, you know the house doesn't have a settling schedule. Hiro lives in Fukuoka, tiny apartment. Very minimalist, very clean girl aesthetic, but for a 50-year-old dude. He's the type of guy who knows exactly where his soy sauce is. And that's where the ick starts. He starts noticing his fridge is gaslighting him. He buys a pack of 6 eggs. The next morning, there are 4. He's like, am I sleep eating? Is my metabolism finally popping off? But then the leftovers go. Then the orange juice level drops an inch. He tells me in the email, I live on the 3rd floor. No balcony. 1 door, dead-bolted. If someone is getting in, they aren't using a key. They're using magic, or they're already here. So Hero does what any sane person does. He goes to Reddit. He's posting on r legal this like, guys, I think my landlord is a snack thief. People are in the comments like, check for carbon monoxide. Classic Reddit move, shout out to that one legend. But Hero is like, no, the air is fine, but my vibes are absolutely rancid. He starts doing these little traps, very Home Alone, but low budget. He puts a hair on the fridge door. It falls. He puts a piece of tape on the closet. It breaks. He's literally being ghosted by a roommate he didn't sign a lease with. The rent in Fukuoka isn't even that bad, but imagine paying 100% of the rent and only getting 60% of your snacks. Truly the biggest L in history. But then things get weird. It's not just food anymore. He finds the toilet seat is warm when he gets home from work. He lives alone. Unless his toilet has a built-in heater he forgot about, something is definitely sitting where it shouldn't be. Hero finally loses it. He buys a pet cam, you know, the ones that send a notification to your phone if it detects motion. He sets it up facing the kitchen. He goes to work, probably thinking he's going to catch a rat or a very athletic raccoon. He's at his desk, mid-meeting, and his phone buzzes. Motion detected in the kitchen. He opens the app, the feed is laggy, it's grainy. He sees himself. Wait, no, he sees a shadow. It's coming from the ceiling. No, it's coming from the storage cupboard above the closet, the place where you put your winter blankets. And the stuff you're too lazy to throw away. A pair of feet drop down, then a torso, then a woman. She's not a ghost. She's wearing his old t-shirt. She walks over to his fridge, opens it, and starts drinking milk straight from the carton. She's been living in his walls like a literal parasite. Hero calls the police. He's sprinting home, probably breaking every speed limit in Japan. He meets the cops outside. He's shaking, showing them the phone. She's in there, right now. They burst in. The apartment is silent. It smells like nothing, just his usual laundry detergent. They check under the bed. Nothing. They check the bathroom. Nothing. The cops start looking at Hero like he's actually lost his mind. Like, sir, did you take your meds today? Is the milk lady in the room with us right now? But Hero points to the top shelf. The tembakuro. It's this tiny, cramped space, maybe a foot deep. The cops get a ladder. One of them slides the door open. The cop screams. Like a genuine, high-pitched, I'm quitting this job scream. Tucked into a ball, hidden behind a thin stack of blankets, is a woman. She's been living there for 365 days. Her name was Tetsuko, 58 years old. She wasn't a ninja, she wasn't a spy. She was just homeless. She found his door unlocked a year ago, slipped in, and found the one place he never checked. She had a small mattress up there. She had a reading light. She had been watching him live his entire life. When he watched TV. She watched through the crack when he slept. She came down and walked around. Think about your own room right now. Look at that one cupboard you haven't opened in months. That space under the stairs. The gap behind the furnace. We think of our homes as secure, but security is just an illusion we pay for. But here's the thing. Hero sent me this story, right? He said the police took her away. He said he changed the locks. He said he moved to a new apartment because, obviously, the vibes were scorched earth. but he attached a photo to the email. It's a selfie of him in his new place. He's smiling, trying to show he's okay. But if you look at the top right corner of the photo, in the reflection of the hallway mirror, there's a small white storage cupboard, and the sliding door is open exactly 2 inches. And I swear to God, if you zoom in, there's a pair of eyes that aren't his. Tatsuko wasn't the only one who knew how to hide. Don't check your closets tonight. You might not like what you find. Stay safe. Or don't, I'm just the messenger. I got this email submission a few weeks ago from a sender I'm going to call Chloe, and honestly, guys, I had to take a walk around the block after reading it because my paranoia was absolutely peaking. I was checking behind my own curtains like an absolute weirdo. Chloe's story is a lot. It's the ultimate, the math isn't mathing situation when it comes to living alone. So grab a snack, lock your doors, literally, go check your deadbolt right now. I'll wait, and let's get into what happened to Chloe in apartment 2B. So a little over a year ago, Chloe was going through it. She had just gotten out of a 5-year relationship that ended so spectacularly bad it was giving literal Greek tragedy. She needed a hard reset. She wanted that dark academia, independent woman, main character era. She lived in a city where the rent is so high it's basically an extortion racket, but she managed to find a listing for a studio apartment in a historic Victorian home that had been chopped up into different units. When she toured it, the landlord, this older guy named Mr. Henderson, was giving off major NPC energy. Just very monotone, barely looked at her, handed her the keys, and basically said, "Don't break anything." But the apartment? Gorgeous. High ceilings, original crown molding, real hardwood floors. It was everything. But the centerpiece of the room was this massive, built-in, dark mahogany wardrobe. It took up almost an entire wall. It was stunning, but it was bolted to the floor and the wall. Mr. Henderson specifically told her, "That stays. It's historic." Chloe thought, okay, free storage, I love it. She signs the lease. But the very first night she slept there, she woke up at like 3 a.m. to the feeling of a freezing cold breeze blowing directly on her face. Which is weird because all her windows were painted shut. The draft was coming from the direction of the wardrobe. Now, if you're like me, you feel a ghost draft on night one, you pack your bags and go back to your mom's house. But Chloe is braver than I am. She gaslit herself. She was like, it's an old house, it's drafty, I'm just being delulu. For the first month, things were mostly fine. But there was this vibe, you know, when you're in an empty room, but your brain keeps telling your body you aren't alone. Like the air pressure is wrong. Chloe was living in a constant state of that. And then there was the smell. Around week 5, Chloe started noticing a scent. She described it in her email as smelling like old pennies and wet laundry. It wasn't overwhelming, but it was always there, specifically lingering right around the left side of that massive mahogany wardrobe. She bought like 12 Bath and Body Works candles, plugged in diffusers, did the whole deep clean. But every time she came home from work and unlocked her door, before her nose could adjust to the room, the scent of old pennies hit her in the face. And then the displacement started. Have you ever put your keys on the kitchen counter and the next morning they're on the coffee table? You just assume you have short-term memory loss, right? Chloe would buy a 12-pack of Diet Coke. She'd drink 2. The next day, there would only be 8 left. She'd find her favorite hoodie draped over the back of her desk chair when she swore she tossed it in the laundry basket. She told me, I genuinely thought I was developing early onset dementia or that the carbon monoxide alarm was broken. She actually bought a carbon monoxide detector because TikTok told her that's why people hallucinate ghosts. But it reads 0. At this point, we are 2 months in. Chloe's mental health is taking a hit. She's sleeping with the TV on. She's constantly exhausted. She starts having these hyper-realistic dreams where she's paralyzed in bed and she can hear someone chewing food in the dark, just wet, slow chewing. She brought this up to her best friend, a guy named Marcus. Marcus is your classic golden retriever bestie. Super handy, builds his own PCs, wears a lot of Carhartt, you know the type. Marcus tells her she's just stressed from the breakup and offers to come over and help her do a massive apartment purge to clear the energy. So Marcus comes over on a Saturday. They are blasting music, cleaning everything. Chloe is dusting the top of that massive wardrobe. She uses a step stool to get up there. And while she's wiping the dust away near the back edge, closest to the wall, she finds a handprint. Not a dusty handprint. A handprint made by someone wiping the dust away. And the fingers were pointing toward the room, meaning whoever put their hand there was reaching over from behind the wardrobe. Chloe shows Marcus. Marcus, trying to be the voice of reason, is like, hey, it's probably from the maintenance guys before you moved in. Or maybe Mr. Henderson was checking for termites. But Chloe isn't having it. The math is definitively not mathing anymore. The draft, the missing Diet Cokes, the smell, and now this handprint. She becomes hyper-fixated on the wardrobe. She gets down on her hands and knees with a flashlight and looks at the baseboard where the wardrobe meets the floor. It's bolted down with these heavy, rusted iron brackets. But when she shines the light into the tiny crack between the wood and the floor, she sees something shiny. She grabs a wire coat hanger, untwists it, and slides it under the gap. She hooks the shiny thing and pulls it out. It's a wrapper. Specifically a wrapper for a peanut butter Cliff Bar. Chloe doesn't eat peanut butter. She's deathly allergic to it. She doesn't even allow it in her apartment. At this exact moment, while she is staring at this wrapper on her floor, her phone buzzes. It's a text from Mr. Henderson, the landlord. The text says, "Please keep the noise down. I've had complaints. It is 2 p.m. on a Saturday, and she and Marcus are just playing Spotify on a Bluetooth speaker, not exactly a rave. But more importantly, Mr. Henderson doesn't live in the building. He lives 2 towns over, so who complained and how did he know?" Chloe looks at Marcus. She is visibly shaking. She points at the wardrobe and says, "We are moving it. Right now." Marcus looks at the iron bolts. He says, "Chloe, it's bolted to the floor. We'd need a socket wrench, a crowbar, and if we scratch these floors, say goodbye to your security deposit." Chloe literally says, "I do not care about the deposit. I will pay you. Go get your tools." So Marcus drives back to his place to get his heavy-duty toolkit. Chloe is left alone in the apartment for about 45 minutes. This 45 minutes, Chloe says, was the longest of her life. She sat on her bed, just staring at the wardrobe. She turned off the music. The apartment was dead silent. About 20 minutes in, she hears a sound. It's faint. It's coming from behind the heavy mahogany wood. Scuff, pause, scuff, like someone in socks shifting their weight on a hard floor. Chloe freezes. She pulls out her phone and texts Marcus. "Hurry up," he replies, "Pulling up now?" Marcus comes rushing in with his toolbox. He takes one look at Chloe's pale face and drops the jokes. He gets right to work. He gets on the floor with the socket wrench. The bolts are old, covered in layers of paint and rust. It takes him a solid 20 minutes of sweating and cursing, but finally he gets the 4 bolts off the floor. He stands up, wipes his forehead, and looks at Chloe. "Ready?" They both put their hands on the side of the massive wardrobe. On 3, they push. It is incredibly heavy, but with a horrible, loud scraping sound against the hardwood. The left side swings out from the wall about 2 feet. A wave of that smell old pennies and wet laundry, mixed with extreme body odor, floods the room. Chloe gags. Marcus grabs his heavy-duty Maglite flashlight and shines it into the space they just exposed behind the wardrobe. Behind the wardrobe wasn't just a blank wall. It was a door. A small, seamlessly cut wooden door, maybe 4 feet high. Painted the exact same color as the surrounding wall so it would blend in perfectly if the wardrobe wasn't there. There was no doorknob. Just a simple iron latch on the outside and a heavy sliding deadbolt on the inside, meaning whoever was in there could lock themselves in. Marcus and Chloe just stand there, frozen. Marcus reaches out and unlatches the exterior hook. He uses his flashlight to push the little door open. It creaks inward. It's a crawl space, but it's not for pipes or wiring. It's a room. A hidden, windowless room about the size of a walk-in closet sandwiched between Chloe's apartment and the hallway. Marcus steps inside first. Chloe follows right behind him, her heart hammering against her ribs. The beam of the flashlight cuts through the dark. The first thing they see is a camping chair in the center of the space. Beside it is a plastic bucket that smells absolutely foul. Surrounding the chair is a graveyard of trash. Empty water bottles, discarded Tupperware containers, and a dozen empty wrappers of peanut butter Cliff Bars. But that wasn't the worst part. Marcus sweeps the flashlight to the left wall. Chloe lets out a noise that she described as a sob trapped in her throat. The drywall is covered in photographs, Polaroids, dozens of them, taped neatly in rows. Marcus steps closer, illuminating them. It's Chloe, every single photo. Chloe sitting at her desk, studying. Chloe cooking pasta in her tiny kitchen. Chloe watching TV on her laptop. Chloe sleeping. The angle of the photos is what made Chloe's stomach drop to the floor. They weren't taken through a window. They weren't taken from a hidden camera in the vent. The angle was low, straight on. They were taken from inside her room. Whoever lived in this space waited until she was dead asleep, unbolted their little hidden door, pushed the back panel of the wardrobe which, it turns out, was on a quiet hinge slipped into her room and just took photos. Walked around her apartment. Drank her Diet Cokes. Chloe is hyperventilating. Marcus is physically shaking. He grabs her arm and says, "We are leaving. Now I'm calling the cops." As he turns to guide her out of the crawlspace, the beam of his flashlight catches one last photo. Sitting alone on the seat of the camping chair. It's a Polaroid of Chloe. She is asleep in her bed. But in this photo, lying next to her on her pillow, is a peanut butter Cliff Bar wrapper. Chloe reaches down with trembling hands and picks up the photo. On the bottom white margin of the Polaroid, written in black Sharpie, is a date and time. Yesterday, 3:14 a.m. They run. They leave the apartment door wide open, run down the stairs, and sit in Marcus's truck with the doors locked while they dial 911. The police arrive about 10 minutes later. 2 squad cars. They go up to the apartment with their guns drawn. Chloe and Marcus wait in the street. 20 minutes later, a cop comes down. He looks grim. He tells them the crawlspace is empty. The person is gone, but he says they found something else. The crawlspace didn't just end there. There was a drop-down hatch in the floor of the hidden room. It led down a narrow utility shaft, straight into the basement of the building. The police ask for the landlord's information. Chloe gives them Mr. Henderson's number and address. The cops go to Mr. Henderson's house 2 towns over to question him about the layout of the building and who had access to the basement. Guys, they found Mr. Henderson dead in his living room. He had suffered a massive heart attack. The coroner determined he had been dead for at least a week. So let's do the math here. Mr. Henderson had been dead for a week, which means he couldn't have sent that text message complaining about the noise earlier that afternoon. And he couldn't have taken the photo of Chloe yesterday at 3:14 a.m. So who was in the walls? The police get a warrant to pull the phone records for Mr. Henderson's cell phone, trying to figure out who had his phone and who sent that text to Chloe. They trace the ping of the cell phone. The phone was pinging off the cell tower located directly above Chloe's apartment building. The police search the building top to bottom. They finally find Mr. Henderson's phone tossed in a dumpster in the alleyway. They also start dusting the crawlspace for prints. They pull a clear set of prints off the Cliff Bar wrappers and the Polaroid camera left behind. They run the prints. The prints belong to Marcus. Yeah, read that back. Her best friend. The golden retriever energy. The guy who came to save her. Here is what the police put together after they arrested him. Marcus had known about the hidden room for months. He had briefly dated a girl who lived in that apartment before Chloe, and he had found the old blueprints online because he was a total architecture nerd. When Chloe was looking for an apartment, he was the one who sent her the listing for Mr. Henderson's building. Marcus had been sneaking into the basement, climbing up the utility shaft, and living in that wall while Chloe was at work. He would slip in at night. He was the one moving her things. He was the one causing the draft. And when Mr. Henderson died, Marcus somehow found out. He went to the old man's house, stole his spare keys and his cell phone so he could monitor the building himself. He sent that text message complaining about the noise while he was standing in the same room as Chloe just to fuel her paranoia. He helped her discover the room so he could play the hero. He wanted her to be so terrified that she would have to move in with him for safety. He literally staged a horror movie in her life just so he could be the final boy that saved her. He just didn't expect the cops to find the hatch to the basement so quickly, and he slipped up by leaving his own trash behind. Marcus is currently in prison. Chloe broke her lease, obviously. She moved back to her home state, bought a dog the size of a small horse, and she told me she now refuses to live anywhere that doesn't have an open floor plan. If there is a closet, she takes the doors off the hinges. So, yeah, that's the story of the door behind the wardrobe. Sometimes the call is coming from inside the house, and sometimes the monster in the walls is the person holding your hand, telling you it's going to be okay. Stay safe out there, guys. Trust your gut. If the math isn't mathing, get out. So this next story is from a guy named Leo. He just moved into this vintage fixer-upper in LA, very haunted chic. I spent my life savings on dry rot vibes, but Leo isn't dealing with a ghost. He sent me a link to an old police file and said, I think I'm living in the sequel. See, back in the early 1900s, there was this woman named Dolly Osterreich. If you think your situationship is messy, Dolly makes you look like a saint. Dolly was married to Fred, a wealthy apron manufacturer. Fred was a midget husband. He liked his booze, he liked his work, and he definitely didn't like Dolly as much as she wanted. Dolly meets this 17-year-old kid named Otto. She calls him her sewing machine, repairman, which is basically the 1913 version of saying, he's just my trainer, babe. But here's the thing, Dolly didn't want to sneak out to see Otto. She wanted him on call, 24/7. She convinces this teenager who is clearly head over heels and lacking any survival instinct to move into her attic. Not for a weekend. Not for a month. Leo, the guy who emailed me, said he found a small, hidden crawlspace in his new house with a single, rotted cigar but in a scrap of paper from 1920. He thinks it was Otto's. Bedroom. Imagine living in a space so small you can't stand up. Just so you can be near someone who's married to a guy living one floor below you. That's not love. That's a psychological thriller. So Otto moves in. This is where the apartment horror kicks in. Otto is literally a human pet. Dolly locks him in from the outside. He has a cot, a tiny desk, and a lamp. During the day, when Fred is at work, Otto comes down and they repair sewing machines. But at 5 p.m., when Fred's car pulls into the driveway, Otto has to go back into his hole. He has to be silent. No coughing, no heavy breathing. No main character energy. If he drops a pen, he could die. Fred is downstairs drinking whiskey, wondering why he hears scratching in the ceiling. He thinks it's rats. Imagine being Fred. You're eating dinner, talking about your day, and 3 feet above your head, your wife's boyfriend is staring at the floorboards, listening to you chew. The absolute ick of it all. Leo told me he tried to sit in his crawlspace for just 10 minutes to see what it was like. He said the silence is the worst part. You start to hallucinate sounds. You start to feel like the house is breathing with you. Otto did this for 10 years. 10 years, 2 different houses. When the Osterreichs moved from Milwaukee to LA, Dolly made sure the new house had a special attic for her. Hidden man, she literally had the house built around his hiding spot. Let's talk about the logistics because my brain is lagging trying to understand this. Otto had to dispose of, waste. Dolly had to sneak him food. If Fred noticed the grocery bill was a little high for 2 people, Dolly would gaslight him into oblivion. Oh, Fred, you know I'm a stress eater. Stop body shaming me. Dolly was the CEO of gaslighting. She convinced Fred he was hearing things for a decade. He thought he was losing his mind. He's going to doctors. He's thinking the house is haunted. Meanwhile, Otto is upstairs writing adventure stories. He actually became a published writer while living in an attic. But then Leo's email gets darker. He says he found a second viewing hole in his ceiling. One that doesn't look into the kitchen or the living room. It looks directly into the shower. Otto wasn't just hiding, he was watching. He knew every secret Fred had. He knew every time Fred was vulnerable. He was the ghost of the house, and he was starting to get territorial. In 1922, the simmer finally turned into a boil. Fred and Dolly are having a massive fight in the bedroom. Fred gets aggressive. He's yelling. Maybe he puts his hands on her. Upstairs, Otto hears everything. He's been the silent observer for a decade, but the sim is glitching. He grabs 2.25 caliber pistols. The attic door bursts open. Fred, who thinks he's alone with his wife, sees a pale, spindly man who looks like he hasn't seen the sun since the Victorian era, sprinting at him with guns. Fred probably thought he was being mugged by a Victorian ghost. Otto doesn't say a word. He just fires. Boom, boom. Fred is dead on the floor. Now, Dolly and Otto have a dead body and a major vibe check failure. What do? They stage a robbery. Dolly tells Otto to lock her in the closet from the outside and take Fred's expensive watch. Then, Otto the professional hider disappears back into the attic. The cops show up. They find Dolly locked in a closet. They find Fred dead. They're like, "How did the robber lock you in from the outside and then vanish?" Dolly's like, "I don't know, he was really fast." The cops are suspicious, but they can't find anyone else in the house. They literally searched the house. They walked right under Otto. They didn't check the attic because the entrance was hidden behind a wardrobe. Otto sat there, holding his breath, inches away from the police. Years go by. Fred is buried. Dolly moves on. But she doesn't let Otto go. She keeps him in the attic of her next house. But she starts dating other men. Attorneys, businessmen. She's living her best widow life. And Otto is still in the ceiling. He's like the world's most loyal, most pathetic Discord mod. He's watching her bring home new guys. He's listening to her laugh with people who aren't him. He murdered for this woman, and now he's just the guy in the roof again. Eventually, Dolly gives Fred's watch, the one from the robbery, to one of her new boyfriends. The boyfriend is like, "Wait, isn't this the watch the police were looking for?" He goes to the cops. The whole thing unspools. When they finally caught Otto, he didn't even look human anymore. He was the Batman of Los Angeles. Not the cool Batman, but like the "I haven't seen a vegetable in 120 months" Batman. So that's the historical story. Crazy, right? But remember Leo? The guy who sent me the email? The one living in the LA fixer-upper? He said he's been hearing the scratching again. He said he called the cops, but since there's no legal entry, they won't do anything. He decided to do his own investigation. He bought a thermal camera, the kind you attach to your iPhone. He sent me a video clip. He's walking through his hallway, pointing the camera at the ceiling. Everything is blue. It's a cold night. But then he hits the spot above his bed. There's a bright, glowing yellow shape, a human-sized heat signature, and it's not moving, it's just curled up. But here's the kicker. Leo lives in a modern condo. Built in 2022, there is no attic. There is no crawl space. There's only 10 inches of concrete between his ceiling and the neighbor's floor. I checked the floor plan for the unit above him. It's been vacant for 6 months, so whose body is heating up Leo's ceiling? Maybe Otto wasn't the last one to realize that the best way to keep a secret is to become part of the house. Check your vents, guys. Sleep tight.